Bill Armstrong, Colorado, and the United States have one of the very outstanding national leaders in the United States Senate. You must re-elect him.
Thank God for America. There's just never been anything like our country, never a place of so much freedom.
I have the honor tonight of introducing a great champion of human rights and justice, Senator William Armstrong.
Because to this day, these are the principles that have meant freedom and equality and liberty for the people of this country. Mr. President Victor Hugo wrote, "Greater than the tread of a mighty army is an idea whose time has come." And that idea is not strategic, it is not credibility, it is not politics, it's not hotboxing members of the House of Representatives. That idea is human freedom. It became obvious to me within, literally over a weekend, that God was calling me to this noble task of being president of Colorado Christian University. It was just so clear to me that the opportunity, the challenge, the significance, the importance of this task was so great that everything that I had done all my life up till then was God's preparation for this task.
The spirit of America has set the standard for freedom around the world. Every generation has faced serious challenges and successfully overcome them to preserve that freedom. For our generation, the warning signs are everywhere. America's founding principles are under direct assault, and the need for enlightened leadership has never been greater. The William L. Armstrong Award honors courageous leaders who call us to a higher standard, whose work ensures that freedom will not die on our watch. I'm Will Armstrong, son of the late Senator and Colorado Christian University President William L. Armstrong. This award was named in honor of my father, follower of Jesus Christ, husband of over 50 years, father of a daughter and a son, grandfather of 8, Colorado statesman, United States Congressman, United States Senator, Colorado Christian University President, and successful businessman. This award is presented annually to a leader who embodies the values that my father held dear: faith, family, and freedom, and who's made a difference in our culture through business, politics, or education. These are the heroes who give us hope for America's future. Their lives are role models of the public and private virtues that make America exceptional. In this film, we're going to look back at my dad's legacy, hoping to inspire all of us to renew our dedication to America's founding principles, to invest in the next generation of leaders, and to be re-energized to continue this essential work. And of course, we're going to talk about this year's honoree, Bob Woodson, author, civil rights activist, founder of the Woodson Center, and pioneer in empowering low-income communities. We're excited about this because, as you'll see, Bob is the classic embodiment of Dad's legacy. Bill Armstrong was born in Nebraska during the depths of the Great Depression, near the center of the Dust Bowl. He was only 4 when the bombing of Pearl Harbor thrust America into the Second World War, the aftermath of which left the world on the brink of nuclear destruction for the next 50 years. The innovations of radio brought real-time news of the war into the Armstrong home, and young Bill was mesmerized by radio's ability to engage the mind with the power of stories. For the rest of his life, he would be fascinated by innovation and new technology. At the age of 11, he got his first job broadcasting a children's radio program in Fremont, Nebraska. He met the father of Top 40 radio and became America's first teenage Top 40 disc jockey. At the same time, he understood the importance of civic duty and enlisted for military service. Dreaming of owning his own business, he bought KOSI Radio in Aurora, Colorado, when he was just 22 years old. He became a highly successful entrepreneur and small businessman. It was in Denver that he met and married Ellen Eaton, his partner in politics, business, faith, and family for nearly 54 years. Alarmed at the rapid growth and overreach of government, Armstrong answered the call of politics and became one of the most influential statesmen of his time, a transformative figure in Colorado politics for 5 decades. A forerunner of the fledgling conservative movement, he served 3 terms in the U.S. House of Representatives.
I'm going to be talking about taxes and why we need to reduce the taxes, about why we need to keep control of Colorado's water in Colorado and not let Jimmy Carter or anybody else take it over. When they see me coming down the street, people way down the distance are going to say, here comes that guy that wants to cut my taxes. When Floyd Haskell and I went to Washington, the national debt was more or less $435 billion. It has been raised 9 times in the years since then. On each occasion, that's come to a vote in the House of Representatives, and I voted against it because I think it is inflationary. I think it hurts our economy. I think it hurts the people of our state.
He was elected to the United States Senate in 1978 during a time of runaway inflation, rampant unemployment, double-digit interest rates, and embarrassing failures of foreign policy. He led the effort to index tax rates to inflation, which has saved American families untold billions. It also contributed to unprecedented economic growth.
Under President Reagan, and with Republicans spearheading the effort in the United States Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives, we've got this country moving again.
Re-elected in 1984, he became chairman of the Republican Policy Committee, the 3rd-ranking leader in the Senate. He was noted for approaching the most difficult issues with civility and with a sharp and contagious sense of humor.
Pretty soon, here came 2 officers from the sheriff's department, 2 deputy sheriffs, and the first thing they did is they walked over and looked at my cow, and one of them said, "Why, this poor animal is in agony." And the other one said, "Yes, you're right," and pulled out his pistol and shot it. Then they came across the road to me. And they said, "How are you feeling?" Well, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling good about America.
Republican William Armstrong of Colorado, who looked into the case.
Senator William Armstrong of Colorado has announced that he will hold Senate hearings next month.
That we will find some formula to bring the federal budget in balance, and that probably all of the automatically indexed programs will be part of that solution.
Gentlemen, thank you both. It's going to be a hot issue, and I'm glad we started talking about it now.
Thank you, Chris.
Senator William Armstrong of Colorado.
Senator William Armstrong of Colorado.
Our guest is Senator William Armstrong, Republican of Colorado, one of the rising young conservatives in the Republican Party.
Okay, let me interrupt you there and get over to Senator Armstrong, who I'm sure would like to refute some of those things. Senator?
If Armstrong had his druthers, he'd start by firing his fellow senators.
Well, I think probably throw the rascals out. Somehow we've created a system in which there's a reverse synergy, where the collective actions are dumber than the actions that any one of them would take.
Senator William Armstrong, a profile in the 100th Congress. I'm Mark Walton, CNN, reporting.
He helped reform entitlements, pushed to keep Social Security solvent, and fought to reinstate the GI Bill, which is now a permanent benefit of military service. He worked closely with President Reagan to limit the growth of government, to strengthen the American economy, and to modernize the world's strongest military.
President, I close just by saying thank you, God bless you. And the very last words, which I would like to say to my colleagues, are these, from the very last verse of the last book of the Holy Scripture. The grace of the Lord Jesus be with all.
Bill Armstrong became an important leader in the national evangelical movement and was one of the most popular speakers at prayer breakfasts and other Christian events across the nation. After he keynoted the National Prayer Breakfast in 1988, Billy Graham called him the most inspirational and enlightening speaker the breakfast has ever had. He was the sponsor of the Year of the Bible and the National Day of Prayer. He taught that civic involvement is a Christian duty. In 2006, Bill Armstrong became president of Colorado Christian University, which he thought was the great calling and most important work of his life. During his tenure, CCU doubled its enrollment and achieved higher academic standards, a stronger curriculum, a campus transformed with new buildings, and a generation of young people inspired by his faith and his example. He always stressed involvement in contemporary issues as an important part of CCU's mission. Under his leadership, the Centennial Institute was founded, and he launched the Western Conservative Summit. Although Bill Armstrong passed away in 2016, the Armstrong Legacy Initiative is now underway at CCU. The cornerstone is the new Armstrong Center, a 60,000 square foot building that includes the university's first dedicated worship chapel and a new library, conference center, and facilities for music, theater, and the performing arts. The Legacy Initiative will continue to build the university and inspire new generations of active Christian citizens who will continue the stewardship of faith, family, and freedom, the great cause of Bill Armstrong's life.
This is a time when we need our most outstanding men and women to be filled with dedication and energy to lead our country in a more wholesome, more thoughtful, more godly direction and restore not only the Christian principles of our nation, but the founding political and constitutional principles of the United States of America. For more than 4 decades, Bob Woodson has dedicated his life to helping low-income people of all races address the problems of their communities through self-help and neighborhood empowerment. Through his writings, speeches, and counsel, he has influenced a generation of thought leaders at the highest levels, while providing inspiration and strategies to help and empower neighborhood leaders in distressed communities. Bob has promoted measurable results and living examples that provide proof of his principles in reclaimed lives and restored communities. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me as I confer with great pleasure the degree of Doctorate of Humanities on Mr. Robert L. Woodson, Sr.
Bob Woodson is a rare American leader, a solutionist who approaches every aspect of his life with the intention of helping improve lives and communities.
The big crisis facing America is not racial. It is the moral and spiritual freefall that is consuming our children. We must come together and look beyond race and realize America is drowning because it's in a moral and spiritual freefall. None of us should be defined by the worst of what we were in the past, but we should be defined by what we want to become in the future. The challenge that we face, are we going to give voice to the least of God's children as a measure of our effectiveness and leadership? The answers will come by going into the community suffering the problem and finding out, not from the 70% of the households that are raising children that are dropping out of school in jail, but what is happening in the 30% of the households of people who are not dropping out of school on jail and drugs.
His work has enabled thousands of people to lift themselves out of poverty and showed generations of political leaders the importance of studying success, not failure. Bob is the founder and inspirational leader of the National Center for Neighborhood Enterprise, now known as the Woodson Center, which empowers grassroots leaders with the resources to transform their communities. What began decades ago has now invested over $50 million in 800 cities and touches tens of thousands of lives each year. Christy and I have spent a lot of time in Washington, D.C., and we are always inspired by its history, and especially our national monuments to freedom, liberty, and justice. During our most recent trip, we took Bob Woodson and his wife Ellen to the Library of Congress, where we reviewed the congressional record of housing legislation from the 1980s that Bob and my father championed, and reflected on how innovative policy can have such a lasting impact on so many people. And we toured the Woodson Center. Then Bob and I sat down for an in-depth conversation about his life's work, his faith, and his thoughts for the future. My big desire is to continue to tell not only the story that you have, but to build on the legacy of Bob Woodson. And so as I start today, I'm sort of curious, if the headline read, "This is Bob Woodson," what would the story be?
Preamble would be, God, give me the strength to tell and pursue the truth, especially when it's inconvenient to me. That would be the first. And the second would be, I want to soar where others are afraid to walk. What I try to do is empty myself of self-importance so that I can be a perfect vessel. I always remind myself to stay humble, that I'm merely an instrument, that I'm not the story.
My dad used to say that you could disagree with somebody without being disagreeable. You've been able to navigate through to affect change. How have you done that?
I'm not interested in winning an argument. I'm interested in advancing a proposition that has the consequence of helping somebody who's in need. And so I learned so much in terms of demeanor and how one gets things done by not engaging in combat in order to make a point. The question is, what can be done that promotes redemption?
Right. Bob, you've described yourself as a cardiac Christian and a radical pragmatist. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Tell me what that means.
It means I feel Christ in my heart. I don't feel him as a Baptist or anything. I just feel driven by Christ is in my heart and what he speaks to me to do. But he also directs me to take action in his name. But I'm a radical pragmatist. I seek strategic alliances with people, but I'm willing to go wherever the truth is.
Bob, the whole idea of neighborhood empowerment, when you started to begin with the Woodson Center and so forth, was really kind of a radical idea. What led you to that? And what was really the idea that prompted it for you to say, this is going to be my life's work and I'm going to pursue it as you have?
Because I witnessed the impact. In my hometown of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, there was the youth gang capital of America. It was a woman that I met, Sister Falaka Fatah and David, found out the oldest of their 6 sons was a gang member, so she invited him to bring his friends home. They sat up all night and talked. She said, why don't you move in with me? And the House of Umoja was born, urban boys town. And gang members from all over the city began to come. 100 of them now were living in peace in this one block. They went down from like 53 gang members down to 2 in less than 1 year. And I followed her around for 3 years as a practitioner. And I wrote a book called A Summons to Life. So what I did was make legible that which was illegible, to explain how the spiritual foundation of what she did translated into secular consequences of changing the lives of people. That's the foundation of the Woodson Center, and that's what we do to try to bring these two worlds together, scholarly deliberations and practical interventions. And so the Woodson Center was set up over 40 years ago to be the voice of low-income people of all races.
Let me take you back to 1986. Your paths crossed with my dad's. Tell us how you got acquainted, not only with my dad, but the important catalyst that began for him and for you.
In 1986, we had been working with some grassroots residents of public housing. And in fact, one of them was profiled on 60 Minutes, that these residents had gone in and driven out the drug dealers and just took charge. So we were seeking to legally give them the right to manage their own development and own it. And no one thought it was possible. I reached out to your dad as a conservative Republican. I said, Bill, would you co-sponsor this with Alan Dixon from Illinois? Bill said, yes. Republicans were against it, but Bill Armstrong stood up. He had no political reason to do that. He was a man who was committed to principle of uplifting the poor. And so he signed on and reached across the aisle to Alan Dixon, and they co-sponsored in the Senate. And when it came to a vote, it passed 93-0 in the Senate. And Ronald Reagan signed it into law, flanked by myself and resident leadership.
What's the lesson we learned from that time?
Your dad put principle above politics and the well-being of the poor against any other consideration. And I'll never forget the kind of leadership he provided.
Bob, I know that you got involved in Colorado Christian University because of your longtime friendship with my dad. Tell us a little bit about your experience from CCU. Why does that matter in our times today?
Because the universities today have become a source of moral pollution, as too many of them have become woke. And so it's just refreshing to be associated with a university like CCU that pushes back against that refuses to succumb to the lure of racial politics, and instead seeks godly foundation for what it does, to stay faithful to the gospel.
Our conversation today we've talked about a lot of different issues. It's given me a great amount of hope. What are things that give you hope as you look out in the future?
What gives me hope is every time I go to one of these communities, and I took the ABC News over to a group of young gang members there where they have 4 guys who've done an average of 20 years in prison. They said, if we have this kind of control in prison, we can have it on the streets. And to sit around that table and watch the transference of values from that generation to the new group, and to see young men that I knew who have spent half their life in and out of prison becoming peace ambassadors, and to see redemption in action.
That gives you hope.
That gives me hope. Because if they can be redeemed, anybody can be redeemed.
Bob Woodson is an innovative leader who has set a higher standard from which we can all find hope and inspiration. He has dedicated his life and talents to the great cause of faith, family, and freedom, the very heart of the William L. Armstrong Award.
This is a time to be strong and very courageous, to be bold, to be creative, to be brilliant, to be the salt of the earth.